A new day, a new dawn, a new defense. Your Seattle Seahawks came into this past Sunday's matchup against the Arizona Cardinals with so much on the line. Lose to Arizona, and you put the Cardinals in a position to feel like they're in the pole position to go and take this division, certainly at least feel like they'll have it in a stranglehold. But win, and you set your crosshairs squarely sighted on that division title. You can control your fate. You would then have every opportunity on these remaining portion of this schedule to go and grab that division title here in this first year under Mike Macdonald. And this team came out and took the victory 16-6 today in a game that was really carried by and large by the defense. Some other parts of the team did their part as well, but we've got to start with the defense. Mike Macdonald's crew showed up in full, and what has really changed over as this defense has started to come into full bloom throughout the course of this year is the run defense has gotten bit by bit by bit better. That which has really bitten us in the behind over past seasons, bitten us in the behind at times during this year, is now starting to really ratchet down to a point of getting to almost, dare I say, dominance. James Conner came into this game as one of your better, more established backs in the league, one of your more consistent backs in the league. He is hard to bring down. He's the type of back you get late into the season who is hard to tackle, and yet your Hawks kept him to 9 yards. And when it starts with the Cardinals, you got to start with stopping the run. They don't get away from it just because they want to get pass happy. This ain't your Pappy's Arizona Cardinals. This ain't your Cliff Kingsbury's Arizona Cardinals. This is a team that understands that they want to be physical, violent, and they want to get downhill on you in the running game with Conner. So they know who they are. They're not going to get away from it. You have to stop it. You're not going to count them on stopping themselves. And the Hawks took it to this running game. And once you did that, you turned Arizona one-dimensional. And not only that, you oftentimes put them behind the sticks in this game. 3 of 12 on third down were the Arizona Cardinals in this game. But then once you did get them into those third and longs, now you're able to lock in on some of those stack fronts, simulated pressures, those games that Mike Macdonald wants to run. We saw right about at the time of the Rams game, him starting to really be able to implement in full force the full flurry of what he can bring in his playbook. He himself said earlier this year that he had to dial a little bit of it down as they were trying to get down just kind of the basics, but now you're seeing the team really get past the basics, I think, onto more of the advanced stuff, and he feels more comfortable really going into the depths of his playbook. You felt that and saw that today. It's harder to do, I think, once you get into sort of those 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4s versus the 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11s, because in those plays you have to play it, I think, a little bit more straight up for the threat of the run. But today, the Seahawks were able to bring the pressure across the board. Everybody seemed to take their opportunity. Everybody was doing a bit of their part. Mafe getting a sack in there. Jaron Reed with a half a sack. He has been solid throughout this year, but he was solid again in this game, both as a run defender and supplying some pass rush on his end of it. Byron Murphy continues to be solid as he's being kind of pushed to the nose tackle role. When we know long-term he'll probably be better as a 3-tech. But one of the reasons that Byron Murphy's not playing the 3-tech, one of the reasons he's taking on the double teams so often right now is because of how well Leonard Williams played. And boy, he had his best game as a Seahawk in this one. He's already been a guy that's been a consistent contributor to this team since he's arrived last year. And this was a guy that you paid a heavy amount of a price to as far as draft capital, 2nd round pick. And then you came back this offseason and you gave him over $20 million a year on average. But it's one of those situations where you say both the trade capital given up and the amount spent to retain him here was well worth it. It's a little bit of echoes of the Dwayne Brown trade back in 2017. You had to give up a 2nd and a 3rd round pick to bring in this guy who's in his 30s at the left tackle position. But yet, even on top of then signing him to a deal after that, you felt good about all given up for the returns that you got. And much has been the same way by Leonard. His stat column is crazy in this game, where you look at 6 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 3 tackles for losses, 1 pass defense, 4 quarterback hits. I can only imagine the amount of hurries and pressures he's going to get credited for on top of this game. And it could have even been more, because there's a play early on in this game where Kyler Murray drops back. He gets quick pressure. He hits Kyler Murray's arm. Doesn't look like Kyler Murray's arm's going forward. The ball seems to be a fumble. We pick it up. We return it for a touchdown. Sack, fumble, touchdown. But instead they overturn the play afterwards. I wasn't so sure about that overturn myself, but another play amongst many in this game where he was all over the place, showing up as both a run defender and as a pass rusher. Beyond that front, even the guys then behind them, and no shocker here because these guys continue to be so solid a duo since they put him in play, and that's Ernest Jones and the rookie Tyrese Knight, the UTEP two-step, as both of those guys continue to be so strong for you in the middle and so different from the prior two inside linebackers you had there. It's not as much as the prior two guys aren't NFL ready-made players or guys who can give you some good play at times and moments, but it's that these guys seem to be so well suited and fitted to this particular style of defense with their brand of play. Ernest Jones has been a godsend. Thank you, Rams. We appreciate you for that one. Your unwillingness to pay inside linebackers helping us here and might very well help to be the sort of focal point, the flash point for this defense in getting their turnaround. But Jones continues to bring what he's brought on tape here in this game, which is that he is so instinctive. He's such a good tackler. He had a moment late in this game where Kyler Murray's out there scrambling around and he's got to try to get it in the end zone there. He breaks free. I've seen him do that before. I've seen him get his way to the end zone, but part of what Ernest Jones does with his great pursuit and angles that he will take out there is he gets his way very efficiently to the ball carrier, and then he's going to make the tackle in space, which is what he was able to do on Kyler Murray in that play, forcing the Cardinals to have to go to a field goal where you know they wanted to punch it in that moment. And the play continues to even get better as you draw back to the back end, but you do love again as you look at just the statistics on a baseline point where Ernest Jones is your number one tackler, Tyrese Knight is your number two tackler. I think that's how you draw it up, as we, I think, more firmly can say than ever that this is defense that is very much heavily driven by its inside linebacker play and those guys getting their job done. And you just can't help but also see a little bit of some of the same mirroring here a bit when you look at the Ravens situation with Macdonald, where it took to him till about game 10 as their defensive coordinator before things really started to click into place. Dolphins had 42 points put up on that Ravens defense that year, but right about the time he was able to make a trade for Roquan Smith, and then you were able to move Patrick Queen from the Mike linebacker role to the Will linebacker role. Now that defense was really able to flow there out there in Baltimore. And similarly here with Knight fitting into that Will linebacker role and Ernest seemingly controlling things at the Mike, you've had the same kind of turnaround starting to happen. And the secondary matched what the defensive front and linebackers were doing. They were all working in tandem and all playing a really good to great game across the board. Your corners on the outside to start things off. Josh Jobe, this kid has been awesome since stepping in there and is nothing different here in this game. I don't know if he gave up a completion in this game. Tariq Woolen was matched up with Marvin Harrison Jr. by and large throughout most of this game, and he held it down on Harrison. Harrison was not able to go off. It looked to me like he was pretty sticky in coverage, and shout out to Woolen for making a good tackle in this game out in space on a play that sometimes has given him some troubles. Witherspoon was only able to come away with this game from 5 tackles, but this is why with him you can't just judge him by a statistical angle of things. Well, where's the interceptions? Well, how many sacks is he getting? Those things will be nice to have, and they'll come along with him within time, but he impacts the game in every way on the defensive side of the ball, from how he tackles to how he gets off blocks to how he hustles to how sticky he can be in coverage to the speed he plays with. Coach Carroll said about Witherspoon when they drafted him that he very much reminded him of a former Coach Carroll safety, Troy Polamalu. And I couldn't quite as much understand that comparison at the time because, of course, Troy Polamalu is a safety and Witherspoon's a corner, and they're just kind of different builds. But I starting to get a little bit more of it in watching games like this from Witherspoon, where what I think Carroll was really tapping into is that weird, different level of speed these guys play with. They're both naturally fast and naturally quick. They have that in their athletic bag, but it's also the willingness to always put the pedal all the way down to the floor. Where other players might get up to 90-95%, they'll put it all the way down to 100% at all times. And that effort and hustle pays off for them time and time again. And you saw it on a play like the interception, the keynote play in this game, where Witherspoon's got to first play the run with Murray, so he's got to play under control in the play, and it's a play that's set up by the whole defense playing very well together, where first and foremost you got the defensive front. It's an RPO for Kyler Murray, a run pass option. So the first is the run option. Does the defensive front look like they're well played in front of me and what I'm seeing off the snap? Does that edge crash down here on the play? Okay, no, I don't see that. Or they play it right. Now I got to keep it and take it to the corner, which is what Kyler does there. Now your force defender being Witherspoon has to come up and force Murray's hand, take away the ability of Murray to go and get that first down. And there's some defenders on that play from a Witherspoon angle of things who I think might be a step or two slow to get to where he got to there. It's not as much as they would have been putting pressure on Murray or allowed him to force him to make the kind of throw maybe potentially he did make there, which ended up turning into an interception, but that Witherspoon ensures Murray makes that interception throw because he's right in on his face as Murray's turning around to try to run it. He's giving him no opportunity to process or think they're out on the run, which we know Murray wants to do when he's improvising like that, is get some time to look down there and take a look at what's happening. Witherspoon took that away, forced the throw. Kobe Bryant over the top, ready and waiting back there, makes the pick at a real key point in this game, a game-changing play as he takes it back for a pick six where the defense was just on it in that way. Could have had that touchdown earlier in addition to it, but they were dominant in this game, start to finish with the defense, and it was because of all three levels of that defense being in that state of mind, being at that level of play. And the safeties right there along with it. Julian Love signed to that contract extension before the start of the year. He's probably been right around a top 10, top 12 level of safety in this sport. Not one of the prime guys, not an all-pro guy, but very solid. And then Kobe Bryant, a guy that is so easy to root for. Two-time All-ACC guy coming out of Cincinnati. Walter Thurl Award winner as the best cornerback in all of college football. So you think, I'm going to get my chance as an outside corner in the NFL, right? I mean, I've earned that, right? I've got this fourth-round pick. I'm going to be that, right? No. We're going to move you into the slot, and then we're going to move you to safety. Good luck. And a lot of players, I think they'd flame out. That's a lot to take on. That's a lot to try to master and get good at. But Kobe has taken this challenge and he has run with it. And the great part about working all three of these positions now as he starts to find his footing as a safety and round into that is that he's giving Mike Macdonald that great piece to work with that can do so many different things comfortably. And Julian Love and him both back there alone, you have guys with outside corner backgrounds when you back trace them a little bit. And it certainly, I think, sets up Macdonald to feel very comfortable in the difference of coverages that he can run on that back end and know that those guys are able to handle it. But in Kobe's case, all-around good, well-played game beyond the interception, beyond the pick six. He's come very close to an interception in the past couple of weeks. He has another interception since being inserted into the lineup. You just feel this guy coming along, and he might be really setting himself and setting the stage here for him to be the long-term starter there, no matter how long the odds looked when he's getting changed there from one position to the other. The defense was outstanding in this game, though. They earned the right to get to where they got to in rushing the passer in the game, as good as they were across the board in that way. It really comes down to first stopping that run and then being dominant in the way that they stopped that run. Really, truly getting the Cardinals in that position where they're in really third and longs. And boy, then you see the spice of what Macdonald can bring into play. Then that's where it gets very hard for the opposition. Stack boxes, simulated pressures. It is a nightmare. The offense on the other side of it was a mixed bag. Mixed bag, I guess, the best put it. When you look at this, some of the troubles of the offense throughout the course of this year remain the troubles of the offense in this game. Starts with, can you run the ball? We all want to see them start off running the ball. The Cardinal defense is vulnerable to being run upon. And the Seahawks tried, but the disconcerting outcome that you're getting more often than not at times is not only are you not getting even the 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but you're getting the penetration. You're getting the offensive lineman getting pushed into the backfield. And it's setting up these running backs to have to oftentimes fight off 2 different tacklers before they can even just get up to the line of scrimmage. Once again, on this day, you're unable to run the ball in any kind of real meaningful way. Kenneth Walker, 16 carries, 41 yards. It looks better on the day because you got a couple more runs at the end to make it look better, but you weren't able to get much done at all throughout most of this day. Zach Charbonnet, even worse, 6 carries, 22 yards, where he has a 12-yarder that makes his day look better, or otherwise it's 5 carries for 10 yards for him on the other side of it. Just no holes, a lot of penetration there into the backfield, not making the running backs' jobs easy in the least, and it puts your running game to a standstill, which then draws you to have sort of the equivalency of what was happening to the Cardinal offense on this day, where you become very one-dimensional, and some of the pass protection woes that we have can more further rise to the surface. Seahawks were able to get some sort of balance here to a degree in this game with 25 overall carries to the 31 passing attempts, which is nice to see, but still 5 sacks on the day against Geno Smith, even though there were some very clean and maybe the most clean pockets he's had on the season on some of the snaps out there today, where he was able to sit back there with sometimes 10, 11 seconds and just look down the field and go through a variety of targets and secondary routes. There was also the other side of that there where there'd be that quick pressure we've seen at times in addition to that. Some of it again stems back from a little bit of that lack of being able to run the ball. So now it all becomes about you passing all the time. And that's a hard place to live in the NFL without any kind of balance to lean back on. And that was, again, I think the case offensively in this game. And it ends up leading to a couple of the bad outcomes of that. And one of those bad outcomes, one of the outcomes we've seen seen far too often here would be the hero ball of Geno Smith. Geno Smith really didn't play a bad game here, and there are a lot of good moments in this game that you can point to that have been good moments throughout this season. Control at the line of scrimmage, some very beautiful throws he makes in this game, high-level throws, some good decisions where he's making some proper movements in the pocket, be it subtle movements or little movements to the right, climb here, keep your eyes down the field there. Some good things you can build upon in this game, and that's been the way it's been through this year. When it goes bad with Geno, it really can shift in that bad direction, and it can become the worst of the outcomes, even though it doesn't happen at a necessarily high rate. It's that when it goes from bad, he turns it a little bit more to worse, and it's oftentimes in these situations where he's, I think, locked into playing that hero ball rather than just playing within himself, sometimes taking a little bit of what the defense gives you, sometimes as a quarterback thinking about the fact you got a defense playing really good football in the day, and that you just need to make sure that you're continuing to give yourself the chance to keep putting up points on the board and furthering yourself out, distancing yourself out. We've got two key moments in this football game that are really true representations of this. First, at the end of the half, Geno's driving them down, getting them into field goal range. It's a key third down and short. Now, Geno drops back to pass. You got to be aware of in that moment. We got to come out of this with the 3 points. We're getting the ball back at halftime. Get the 3 points. And we've seen too often at times him get a little bit too free-flowing there down near the goal line, down near to where you could be scoring some points and essentially having points wiped off the board because you're throwing an interception or you're having an untimely turnover, or in this case, taking a bad sack in that moment, knocking you out of field goal range and removing basically that 3-point opportunity that could have presented itself and help you kind of distance this game out much earlier on than you were able to do. Now, that's somewhat back on the play calling there because it seemed like the Seahawks were trying to strike a little bit deeper down the field on that passing attempt, but Geno also on that passing attempt doesn't see the blitz coming from the right side. You've got Walker in there pass protecting, and it just turns into a nightmare of a play. But the decision making from Geno Smith has got to be better in those moments. He's got to manage the game better in those moments with it because he's taking these plays that are in a bad state and sometimes making them to a worse state. Now, again, a lot of other good plays in this game, but then you get the even worse play later on in this game where he breaks the pocket. You get a field goal late in that game at that point. With the way your defense is playing, it is game over. Geno breaks the pocket. It's 3rd and 7. He would appear to have the 7 yards readily available for him as far as scrambling goes, but instead tries to fit a throw into a bad place late, and it's easily picked off. It's a horrible throw. It's inexcusable. You've got to go take the 7 yards. And for whatever reason, Geno's gotten locked up at times this year in being completely unwilling to use his legs. Yet we have these moments where when he uses his legs, he can be so effective when he goes to it, including last week where on back-to-back scrambles, you were able to close out that 49er game, and yet he's very hesitant to do it. There was another point in this game where he had a point, could have scrambled, and again, he kind of locked up for a moment, went, no, I don't really want to do it. And then when he finally scrambled, it went from being a game that would have been probably 8 or 9 yards to like 4 yards. Really, when you've got this offense struggling as much as they are, especially struggling in the run game, you've got to take the easy manufactured stuff that may present itself. Word is out on the street with Geno Smith, he doesn't want to scramble, and that maybe he's not able to move as well in the pocket at times as some of these younger, more nimbly-pimbly quarterbacks that exist in this sport. So then you get these defenders rushing with unmitigated aggressiveness, getting wild outside their pass rush lanes and presenting an opportunity for Geno to step up and go take some free and easy yards. And yet he seems to be so very hesitant to do so. And when you look at this offense being as stagnant as they've been at times here in recent weeks, you've got to go take some of the free and easy yards where they exist. It doesn't have to be a 15, 20-yard scramble, a 5, 6-yard play. Those kind of plays to get you more into the 3rd and short situations where the defense has to play you a little bit more honest, rather than getting yourself always constantly behind the sticks. As we had that stat just last week presented that the Seahawks are going to basically set a record since the Elias Stat Bureau has been created in 1980. There's never been an offensive season that's been had where you've averaged 3rd down and 9 yards of average of down and distance, and that's where the Seahawks have lived by and large part throughout this year. It was a little bit better today, but it speaks volumes to that type of stat being in place for your Seahawks and how they need to improve by getting a little bit closer on 3rd down to get better at getting 3rd down conversions. But Geno's decision making, using his legs, and then also the offensive coordinator helping him out in addition to this, giving him some more options that are the quick options to get the ball out of Geno's hands, not always making it so hard every play to get the job done. I think these are going to be free and easy points the offense can find to find some improvement as we go along throughout this year. but it wasn't a completely bad day. You were able to find some consistency with this offense. JSN, over this 3-game span, has had the second best 3-game run of any Seattle Seahawks wide receiver in your history, with the exception of who? My man, Mr. Steve Largent. But not too shabby a run here for JSN in this 3-game stretch where he is really solidifying himself as that number 2 option. And the Seahawks are finding a good balance between DK and JSN. You only had 31 passing attempts on the day-to-day, so there wasn't as many of a target-rich environment for them both to go out there and feast. But you are finding a balance between the two of them, and maybe that perfect balance at that to keep defenses off balance in how you play against the Seahawks as far as coverage is concerned. The tight ends I thought held up pretty well as well, where you're out Noah Fant in this game, going to Farrell Brown, going to the rookie A.J. Barner, the 4th-round pick. Those guys held up relatively well as blockers. Farrell had kind of a brutal penalty in this game, but aside from that, he was good. Had a good catch in the run. Barner the same way, where he was able to extend a catch and run and get a first down to play. It was one of those moments where you really needed that first down, a little bit of shot of life to get you going forward. And those guys have been pretty solid overall when you've asked them to fill in for what you're asking them to do. The offensive line in general was pretty good. There were some brutal moments, like I said, but there were some great moments where you gave Geno enough time to enjoy a 3-course meal, including a dessert. And that stood out quite a bit in this game. So you got to give them that tip of the cap on their side, even though they were not able to create a hole for the life of themselves out there as far as running backs were concerned. But it was a bit of a mixed bag, like I say, on this day overall. The special teams always tend to do their part. Dixon wasn't necessarily his typical phenomenal self. He was just very good. And at one point he had to get a kick off because the pressure was bearing down on him and almost about to block the kick. So he was able to get that off. He also had a couple of fantastic kicks, including a pinning punt down inside the 20, where he put it right down at the 2 and it bounced back and you're able to get a nice down there instead of it rolling into the end zone. So some good roll on that one. And then our guy, Jason Myers, he's in a Dr. Jekyll, not Mr. Hyde kind of year. He is kicking very well. And yeah, there's the missed extra point in this game, but it's the made field goal attempt at the end of this game that looms so very huge in this one. That's not a tough end of the stadium to make a game-winning kick. If you go back and you look at the recent 20 years of missed kicks in that stadium, down at that end where it's a little bit more opened up and the elements can swirl a bit down there, it makes it harder to pinpoint it on those kicks down there, especially if you have the elements at play. And that rain was bearing down today. I don't think we can overstate that when we look at both offenses to say, hey, this did impact things on both sides of the ball. And you've got to give a bit of a consideration of that, of how hard it is to try to make offenses work, run the ball, pass the ball, when the elements start coming into play. It's to the benefit of the defense when that does happen, and will typically lead to these kind of low-scoring games. But why these kind of then field goal attempts loom so large over the rest of the football game, where it's a 50-yard kick from Myers, it's in the rain, it's at that bad end of the stadium you don't want to be kicking into, and then you get a little bit of a high snap on the play there where Dixon's got to corral it and get it down fast, which props to Dixon on getting the hold down. But then the 50-yard attempts, he puts her right through the middle of the uprights, and it's game over from there. There just wasn't enough time on the clock. The Cardinals just didn't have enough timeouts, and your Seahawks get to be in the greatest formation there is in football. What formation is that? Victory formation. On top of that, in this most wonderful weekend of football, every single team in your division lost, so now your Seattle Seahawks sit solely deep into the NFL season in first place. And what a beautiful place to be in this first season under Mike Macdonald. We were all not really going to live on the results of this first year under Macdonald, understanding most new coaches need to get their systems onboarded, need to get their culture in place, and that does take a little bit of time. But we hoped we'd see some of the signs of it. We'd hope we see it start to come into form, especially by the end of the year. Maybe be rough waters early on, but can it round into form by the end of the year? And the answer is, as we're watching it right now, and as I think we're going to see by the end of the season, resoundingly, yes. He is running that cutting-edge style of defense. He is one of your bright, young defensive minds in this sport, and he is just starting to get into the bag of his playbook. God help the rest of the NFL when he's able to unleash all the wonders that he can put on the football field. Outstanding performance for your Seahawks. Get hyped up for this team. First year of Macdonald, most coaches can barely scratch out 5, 6, 7 wins. You've got the division title squarely in your sights, and you get that division title, you get that home playoff game. You're playing your best football come January. I just say anything can happen from there. My name is Brandon Kane. This is the Hawks Nest. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. But beyond all that, don't you ever forget, go Hawks.